Namaste, Bulavinaka. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskaram. Thank you for having us here today, and thank you for the invitation. As you know, we've been advertising and having public meetings, but this community here, of course, in particular the ladies here, requested for a budget consultation. That's why we are here this morning. And in the budget consultations, what we do is that we make a short presentation, explain to you what's happening in the economy, and then we open up the floor for any issues that you may want to have addressed in the budget. As you know, the budget, in fact, was delivered last year. When the budget was delivered last year, we still had the borders were shut down. So we did say that if the borders are going to open or things will change, we may have a mini-budget. So this mini-budget will take us to the end of July. And the mini-budget is to be presented on the 24th of March at 7:30 p.m., which is next Thursday. And then we debate the budget the next day, because the mini-budget, we do it in one day. Then, God willing, gets approved on Friday. And once the budget is approved, then the mini-budget comes into effect. And so what we do, what we've been doing, we were we had some private meetings in Ba, Lotoka. We had meetings in Lotoka, Nandi, Singatoka. We've had meetings in Nasori over here. We were in Savu and Lambasa yesterday, and we had a presentation also, ad hoc one, in Numbu, near Langa, near the northwest part of Vanuatu. And today we are here today. 3 o'clock we have one meeting with one of the Chamber of Commerce. Then tonight we have it at Vashish Muni School in Navua. And then hopefully we'll finish it, because we have to go and prepare the budget. And the budget has to be prepared by next week on Thursday night. So you can watch the budget presentation next week Thursday at 7:30 p.m. on the YLSC platform. It will be live. But what I also wanted to say is that once I do the short presentation, you can then raise any issues, you can ask any questions, you can speak in any language, Fiji, Hindi, Itoke language, any language, Chinese, anything. We've got translators here. People can do the translation for us. And so I'll just do a very quick presentation on that. I assume that, because I think I'll just speak in English, but of course, like I said, you can ask your questions in any language you like. Okay? And if you want me to stop somewhere, tell me to stop, to go over something, and I'll do that. No problem. Let's keep it as informal as possible. Everybody should relax and smile, and then we can go proceed with it. Okay, so what we need to do in order to understand where the economy is, we need to know what was the economy like before the pandemic. So today the presentation will be what was the economy like before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now, of course, the borders have opened up, what the economy will be like now. So as I mentioned here, Fijian economy pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. So you see, the Fijian economy was growing every year for the past 9 years, from 2010 to 2019. It was growing every year. When the economy grows every year, it means that more people are getting jobs, more people have money in their pocket. The more people, as you see, there are more cars on the road. Nearly everybody has a mobile phone now. These are all the things that indicates that the economy is growing. And never before in Fiji have we had 9 years straight of growth. You see, it's been growing for 9 years straight. Before the Fijian economy, you would have 1 year of growth, then 1 year negative growth, 1 year growth, 1 year negative growth. Only once before did the economy grow straight for about 6 to 7 years after independence. Since then, it's been growing. It'll grow one year, next year will be negative growth. Grow 1 year, negative growth. So as a result of it growing for 9 years, we saw that the GDP is the gross domestic product. In other words, the amount of production in the country has increased significantly. The wealth has increased significantly. At independence, those of you old enough to know independence, is about $100 million only. And it grew slowly every year, every 10 years. But see, from 2010 to 2019, it grew, it doubled in a short period of time. It doubled. So which meant that the amount, if you divide the amount of money we have, the production I should say, with the number of people, you can see it went up from $7,000 to $13,000. I'm just putting it very simply. But essentially meant there's a lot more jobs, a lot more money in the system. a lot more, amenities, cars, a lot more roads. You did not have your roads star sealed. All these things have happened in the past number of years. Now, this has happened also because government introduced things like disability allowance. Before, some of you are old enough to know, we never had disability allowance. We have, rural pregnant women. They are given food vouchers now. We have also people, for example, those of you who have never worked for anybody, if you are 65 years old and never had FNPF, government gives $100 a month, what we call social pension. And the reason why we did that was because a lot of women, for example, did not work in the formal sector. Not all of them were teachers, etc. They sold vegetables by the roadside, they grew their vegetables, sold their vegetables by the roadside. The women in the villages, maybe they caught fish, they sell dalo, cassava, you're selling bhindi, bhaji, boda, all of this by the roadside. Or some women worked as what we call house girls in Fiji. They never had FNPF. Nobody had FNPF, those people. So when they got older, unlike people with FNPF, they'll get a pension. These people had no pension. So therefore, government decided, initially we started giving those over the age of 70, started off with a sum less than $100, and now it's 65, you get $100. At least that's some form of income for them. And nowadays also, as you know, society is changing. Not all the children live with their parents now and support them. Some go away, some migrate overseas, some may live in Suva or live in Nandi or whatever it is. So those are the things that we did do. Of course, the other major thing that we did do is free education. Nobody had free education before. As you know, so he'll go to school too when he's old enough to go to school. And it'll be free for him. The point is, before, I've heard so many stories, in particular women have said to me, we had a large family, 5 or 6 children in the family, and my father could not afford to send everybody to school. So they decided the brothers will go to school and the girls will stay at home because they'll get married in any case. That was the thinking. And that's what happened. So many people said, I could have finished high school, I was such a good student, but we could not afford the school fees. So many people have said that I was very good in school, but my father could not send me to university, could not afford it. That problem is gone today. We introduced toppers, we introduced TELs. People get scholarships on their capability. Kabiliyat pe mile. They get it on the capability, the capacity to do the job. If they've got good marks, they can get toppers. But they also get TELs too. So all of those things actually contributed to the economy growing up. Today, to the economy growing, I should say. Today, there are far more girls in school than boys in high school. Far more girls in university than boys in universities. Purely as a result of free education. Purely as a result of TELs and toppers. Giving people a lot more opportunities. All of these things have helped. Of course, we have things like legal aid now. People can go to legal aid. Government funds over $5 million a year for legal aid. Even people want to go and get a will made, they make it for you. You've got disputes, domestic issues, etc. You get free legal advice. You get free legal representation. So that helps society. And of course, now, as I said, digital connectivity, all of these things have helped, the society at large. It's not only tourism and sugarcane industry that supports the economy. There are other things, like vegetables. Last year, we imported over $110 million worth of agriculture produce. Never before has been done. Yangona, bhaji, boda, bhindi, turmeric. Haldi is now a big thing. We are exporting a lot of haldi now, turmeric. And also, of course, they've been exporting ginger too. A lot of Natasiri farmers are growing ginger. So the first time we've exported so much, in excess of $110 million. Those things contribute to the economy. Yeah, of course, the agriculture, wholesale, retail, manufacturing. We now also have a new sector. During COVID, when COVID came around, over 100,000 people lost their jobs. I'll come to that statistics later. There was over 100,000 people lost their jobs. Some people went part-time. But there's one sector that jobs grew by 3,000 jobs. It's what you call the BPO sector. The BPO sector essentially is what it's called business processing outsourcing. So assuming that this lady, assuming that she lives in Sydney and she wants to call her bank to find out some bank details, or she's applied for a loan, she wants to find out has it been approved or not. When she makes the phone call to the Sydney branch, she's living in Sydney, that phone call gets directed to Fiji. And a person sitting in Fiji answers the phone call and gives her the answers. That's what you call outsourcing, call center outsourcing. A lot of businesses are now bringing that type of business to Fiji. Some people, for example, the insurance claim forms are being processed in Fiji for Australians and Australian companies. That area is a huge growth area for us, and we're focusing a lot in that. Government, in fact, in the budget this year has given $300,000 to the BPO Council to grow that business. Those of you who have Digicel, you know that Digicel is being bought by Telstra, which is an Australian company, this year. It should be, hopefully the sale should be completed by the end of this month. And Telstra itself has a lot of that kind of outsourcing work that they do themselves. So we are talking to them behind the scenes and obviously trying to get those jobs into Fiji too. Plus, a lot of the outsourcing work, Australian companies, they had it in Philippines and India. But because of COVID, they want their businesses closer to home. So Fiji is closer. You're only 3.5 hours flight away. Philippines is about 8-9 hours. India is even further away for them. So they want their businesses closer. It's a huge opportunity for us. So what actually led to this? Why did we grow for 9 years straight? And of course, the reason why we grew is because we have a strong constitution, gives everybody their rights. The Itoke people land are guaranteed. You have equal rights, other people have equal rights in terms of access to economy, transportation, housing. We have strong and innovative policies. I talked to you about social pension, disability allowance, all of that has empowered people. Education, government has embarked on a number of other policies that is, for example, we have tax-free status. A lot of people are building warehouses and shops. I'm talking all before the pandemic. You can see, you have extra supermarket and all these other supermarkets growing, the type of food products that are being made available. It's an indication that the economy is growing. Because that's why when the economy is growing, that's when businesses want to invest. You have your 4-lane road now over here. All of these things help. So government has been investing a lot in infrastructure. The amount of people who've been connected to electricity and water in the past few years has never been done before in such a short period of time. We were on Tuesday night, we were, like I said, in the northwest of Vanuatu. Those people never had electricity. Today they have electricity. People now who never had water now have water. So when we give somebody, some of you, of course you've had electricity here for a long time, but you know that if you have electricity, you can store things. You have your fridge, you have your cooler, you have your vegetables you don't sell, you can keep it in the fridge, in the cooler. If somebody catches fish, they sell fish by the roadside, $25 a bundle. If they don't have a fridge, they have to sell the fish by that day. So you come along, you negotiate with them, it's in the afternoon, they sell it to you for $5. You have to get rid of it. But the moment the lady has the fridge, the cooler, she won't reduce her price because she knows she can store the fish, right? And then she sells it $25. Next day, she puts in the cooler in the evening. Next day, you come along, she throw fresh water on it, say fresh fish for sale, $25. That's what happens, correct? I know you all do it. Fresh bhindi for sale 2 days ago. So this is what you call increasing the productive capacity. You're increasing people's income levels. So that's what's been happening, of course. Government has been doing that. New technology. I know many of you got 360. 2 rounds of 360. I know some people got 2 rounds of $50. I know some people got $90. Now, if you know that, how did we give the 360? Somebody got a phone? All of you people, you applied for that on this thing. You did not have to go to the Ministry of Poverty Alleviation. You did not have to go to the DO, form one long queue, go to any government department, form a long queue. Application, 3 minutes. Money, few seconds. That's precisely what happened. The only reason we were able to do that, thank you, is that we have the technology now. Today there are over 600,000 smartphones in Fiji. There are more SIM cards in Fiji than actual people being used. You know that? It's a fact. Some of you I know have 2 SIM cards. Some have 3 SIM cards. Some have it for the wrong reason, some have it for the right reason. That's the situation in Fiji. And a lot of it is to do with technology. If you know about mobile phones, a few years ago, the mobile phones, the peak period, the cost was 99 cents a unit. Today is 23 cents a unit. Today you have 5 up, 7 up, free talk time, all of that. That never happened before. So that essentially is what led us to this. Because government has been very strategic in where we invest. We spent, for example, recently $20 million in upgrading the submarine cable that comes to Fiji, that lands in Fiji. Your internet speed is faster, the broadband is wider, people watch movies on their phones, you get the wireless platform. All of this actually created to this economic well-being that we have. And government, as you know, has reduced taxes too. In 2007, I remember, if you earn more than $8,400 a year, you paid taxes. Then it went up to $8,600. Then we changed it that if you earn less than $16,000, you don't pay taxes. Now, you don't pay any taxes unless you earn more than $30,000. You know, it was interesting. We were in Sawu yesterday, and a lady said, it's unfair. She said, you should introduce tax for what we call double income. In other words, you have a husband and wife. So the wife earns $28,000. She doesn't pay tax. Husband earns $29,000. He doesn't pay tax. Right? So both of them don't pay any tax. So they get more money in their pocket. And this lady said, but that's not fair. Because this person earns $35,000 and he pays tax. You see what I mean? But the $35,000 is not that much tax. It's progressive taxation. As you earn more, it goes higher. But what that has meant is that a lot of people who now earn money, they don't pay any tax, which means they've got lots more money to spend. So they'll go and buy a bed. When you buy a bed, some furniture maker is making money. You may go and buy some, other type of furniture. You may extend your home. So that when you extend your home, you build one, bring one carpenter, he lays the bricks, he gets money, then he has money in his pocket, he goes and spends the money. See, the thinking is, if I have $100 today with me, and I keep it to myself, it's no use. It won't make much money. But if I give everybody here $5 each, 20 people will get $5 each. Then they'll go and use that $5 to buy something, to build something. That will mean another 20 people will get that money also. So that's the thinking that government has. And we're diversifying the economy also. Okay, so what happened when COVID came along? Over 100,000 Fijians were either unemployed or reduced hours. Overnight. Nobody expected the borders to close. In the modern day world, nobody expected the borders to close. Not just in Fiji, but the entire world. Nobody expected the borders to close. When the borders closed, government revenue went down by 50%, halved overnight, gone. And then, of course, our economy shrunk because the tourists did not come. Remember, when the tourists don't come, it's not just only about the people who work in the hotel. So they've lost their jobs. People work at the airport, they've lost their jobs. People work for Fiji Airways, they've lost their jobs. The lady who sells handicraft at the hotel, she no longer has any business. If you go to Nandi Airport, for example, before you enter Nandi Airport, on the right-hand side, you'll see a lot of trees. Before the borders closed down, you see a lot of women, mainly, used to sell things there. Lovo pack, roti parcel, boiled EV or nabi, as you say, boiled nabi, mithai, makei, sila. They used to sell that stuff. Who were their customers? Not the tourists, but the hotel workers. the airport workers, sorry. So airport workers were their customers. So when the airport is shut down, they don't have any customers. So they don't have any money. Same thing, a lot of people selling outside Fiji Airways office. There's about 400 people working there every day, 400 or 500 people. They no longer had any business. The boys who sell the boo, around the hotels to the tourists, no longer have any business. So it affected a lot of people. So the economy shrunk by 15%. It's never shrunk by 15% overnight. Of course, when the government has less money, we have to manage it a lot better. But government also made a decision that even though the economy has shrunk so much, there are certain things we must continue. We must continue to have free education. We must continue to give social welfare. That we must do. All of you who sell stuff at the markets, you don't pay any market fees. Government is paying that for the 1 year. Those of you fishermen and women who are applying for a license, this year we're paying for your fishing license. Taxi drivers, their permits, this year being renewed, the license, PSV license, we're paying for that. So all of these things government had to do to maintain a particular lifestyle. But if your revenue is shrunk, obviously government has to borrow more money to maintain that particular lifestyle. So of course, when you borrow money, your debt levels will increase. But it's for a good reason. So as I mentioned, see, we grew for 9 years here. Then the economy contracted, when you had negative growth. Borders have opened up now. We expect the economy to grow by 11.3%. It's that high because we're starting off with a low base, and I'll explain to you why. Look at the number of tourists we had. In 2010, we had 632,000 tourists. It was growing here. Before COVID, 894,000 tourists. If COVID did not come, the economy, the number of tourists probably would have hit 1 million here. But look at how much it dropped by. 894,000, 147,000, and then 32,000 only last year. So we expect to have 447,000 tourists this year. God willing, we'll get them. But look at that, it's still lower than 2010. So we have a long way to go. Remember, those of you selling fruits and vegetables here, it has an impact on you too. Because a lot of the people say in Singatoka, they may sell fruit and vegetables to the hotels. So when the hotels are shut down, they don't have customers. So you have an oversupply of maybe vegetables. So your price comes down. Now when the hotels will open up, there may be a demand for their vegetables. So they'll sell it to the tourists first, or to the hotels first. So more people demand your fruits and vegetables. There's an impact. Let's look at other countries, how much they're contracted by. Let's look at other island countries that are dependent on tourism. Countries like Maldives. Maldives is in the Indian Ocean. They get a lot of Chinese and European tourists. They went a negative growth rate of 32%. These countries are in the Caribbean, St. Lucia, Barbados, Bahamas, St. Kitts, Nevis. All of these countries get a lot of American and Canadian tourists. They're in the Caribbean. They're island countries like us, heavily dependent on tourism. Look at how much they contracted by. We sit here at 15.2. So it's not just us. It's obviously all those other countries too. You can get these figures from the International Monetary Fund. It's all available there. And other countries in the world too. They're all contracted. Look at that. Australia, they contracted by 2.4 and 2.1%. And I'll show you how much of an impact it had on the debt levels. I'm going through this quickly, so you can ask me questions later on too. So what did we do apart from having free education? We spent over $500 million in unemployment support. You know, like I said, the market vendors fees. Now if you go in, those people who normally can't afford to go to a private doctor, a GP, now you can go to them and we pay your fees for you. That's already started. We started doing that last year. We've advertised again, and hopefully more doctors in Nosori will join too. In fact, when we advertised, some doctors they knew government was going to pay, they normally charge $10. When we said we'll pay, they simply charged $25. It's dead. In fact, one doctor in Nasori did do that. So we said, no, we don't want you. There's none at the moment, but we've advertised again. 2 weeks ago, 3 have applied. If they get the right price, then we'll have them. If the wrong price, we can't have them. We've already paid out $1.4 million. So we have them in Suva, in other parts. We have them in Singatoka, Nandi, Ba, one in Latoka, and hopefully we'll get some in Lambas and South South. So we've done things like that. We've also, of course, like I said, market vendors fees, etc. So this is how much we paid. You see, there are 2 types of employment people have. There are those people who work formally for somebody. So they may be a teacher, they may work for a company. They get FNPF paid. So when they lost their jobs, we said, those people, you can get money from your general account. You can take money out, a certain amount of money every fortnight. When the general account funds ran out, we paid on their behalf, through the FNPF, $225 a fortnight. So when you add all those people up, we paid $205 million. That's how much money is paid, the $225 a fortnight. And of course, there's some people that reduced hours. We also gave them money too. Reduced hours people. The other group of people that are working, of course, are those people in the informal sector. People who don't work for anybody, but they sell fruits and vegetables. Somebody may be a house girl. So like I mentioned, the ladies doing the handicraft. They no longer have a job. So they can also apply. So these are the people who got the $90. Initially we said $90 per household. One household, you must apply $90. But then we discovered there are 5 people in the same household, they all applied $90. There was chorrowing going on in the system. So then we reduced it. Then we said, okay, $50 per individual. So even though you have 5 people in the household, all 5 of them can apply, but $50. So you can see the $90, first round we paid $10.6 million. First round $50, $11.2 million. Second round $50, $10.2 million. Then of course the famous 360. 360 we paid 294,924 people, $106 million we paid. So sometimes people say, oh, 360 is too little. Or they say $90 is too little. But we have to calculate how many people will apply. We have to look at the overall. You may say 360 is too little, but in fact it is a lot of money. When you get this many people, $106 million paid out. We could have paid it in one day, but we didn't because everybody will go and line up at Vodafone and Digital. So we paid it over a week. Of course, then we have second round of 360s, $87 million we paid. So you can imagine when the economy is small, and if we did not do this, the economy would get even smaller. Because we had so many people, when they got the money, they said we went and paid our rent. Some people went and bought food. Some people paid, bought clothes or shoes for the children. Some people drank beer with it. Some people did. Some people may have got 360 and spent $300 on food and clothes and rent, but may have spent $60 on the beer. Some people may have, spent $40. Some people spent the entire 360 on the beer. Some people did do that. But when we put out these initiatives, we do a calculation. If there is about 10% of the people who don't put it to the right use, it's okay for us. As long as the 85 or 90% of the people put it to good use. We can't give you the money and say, hey, don't spend it here, don't buy this, don't buy that. It's your individual responsibility. Now, all governments run what you call a deficit. We're not a business. We can't make profit. We like to make profit. In some places, we like to make profit. But overall, we can't. So when we tahsil this road of yours, we did not say, this cost us $2 million. Can you please all pay money now? Right? We can't expect that. Before, when you used to get your birth certificate, it used to cost $2.25. $2.25 is not even enough to cover the cost of the ink, the electricity, the paper. Forget the machine and the personnel. You go to the hospital, it's free. The doctor gets paid $150,000, $180,000 a year. We don't charge you full fees for that. There's no fees for that. So government will, of course, have higher expenditure. We'll make some money too when people pay income tax, when when you pay VAT, people pay corporate tax, that's how we get money. And then we spend that money to supply services. That's how governments work. And because governments always run what we call a deficit, there'll always be less money you make and more money you spend. But the trick is to make sure the money that you spend is spent wisely. So if you're borrowing money to build tahsil roads, connect people to electricity, building schools, connecting people to water, that's good use of money. But if you're going to borrow money to just waste it, or you're borrowing money to run what you call operational cost, that's not a good thing. Before, when we had the 9 years of growth, we have what we call operating surplus. In other words, all the money we made, if we paid for all our day-to-day expenses, we still had some left over. Then we used that leftover together with some borrowed money to build things. Cyclone Winston cost us $500 million. Of that, $200 million, over $200 million was spent to just rebuild schools. Now, most schools in Fiji is not owned by government. You have a school here, what's the name of the school down here? Sorry? Nakai Congo Sanatan Dharam. Nakai Congo Sanatan School is owned by the Sanatan organization. It's not owned by government. But when the roof blows away, we have to build it. Right? It's a moral obligation. Most schools, they are faith-based organizations or run by the communities. But we have to build it. We spend over $200 million. That's why we don't like cyclones. I'm sure you don't like that too. But now, of course, climate change is a big issue. Our Prime Minister goes internationally, talks about climate change, creating awareness of it. And what we are saying, we need what we call climate justice. That is, we did not cause the climate change. It's the industrialized countries, the rich countries who put so much smoke in the air, carbon dioxide in the air, that caused the hole in the atmosphere, and this caused climate change heating up. But we are bearing the brunt of it. Cyclone Winston, in 36 hours, 1/3 of our GDP got wiped off. So what we are saying, so we're going to talk to the World Bank, ADB, and say to them, if we need to borrow money after cyclones, you have to give it to us at very cheap rate. This is the industrialized world that caused the problem. We should be, and we are suffering the consequences. So therefore, we should get cheaper money. Some people are saying we're going around with a begging bowl. It's not begging bowl, it's the reality of the matter. Even this year around, when the rain, it wasn't even a cyclone, the amount of rain we got, if you go to the highway between Singatoke and Nandi, one place, the entire highway is gone. Entire highway is gone. Two places, one lane is gone. It costs money. When there's a flood here, your water supply gets stopped. Why? Because we extract water from the river. We clean that water, and you drink it. Of course, when the flooding comes along, the siltation, it damages everything. So that's part of climate change. So borrowing, of course, for that, we have to increase borrowing. And at this particular point in time, because of the pandemic, we have to increase our borrowing too. So just over here, you see, this is our, what we call, the blue is the expenditure, how much money we spend in a year. This one here is how much money we make in a year. Right? So you can see, and this is how much, what we may call loss, the deficit. The trick is to keep this low. You manage your funds, keep that low. It's manageable. But of course, because of COVID, this has become much bigger. You know, this $3.2 billion, out of the $3.2 billion, every year we pay $1.1 billion just in salaries to civil servants. That's our wages bill. We employ about 30,000 people. Your police, your lands department, social welfare, all of those ministries, departments, corrections, prisons, RFMF, all the people who work here in this area, who work in government, teachers. We have 12,000 teachers we pay the salaries for. All of their salaries combined is $1.1 billion. So we have, say, out of this $3.2 billion, we only then have $2.1 billion left to pay for other things. The fuel, the running expenses, and then also that money is also used to build things, tahsiling roads, all of that. So our debt to GDP ratio is pretty good. We're sitting here. Then of course, because of COVID, it increased. We're sitting here at $9.1 billion, 88.1%. One thing I wanted to highlight to you is if you're borrowing for the right reason, and the other thing is, what is the cost of the debt? If this lady goes out to borrow money for her, say, build a house, BSP gives her 5%, Baroda gives her 4%, Home Finance gives her 1%, who will she borrow from? Obviously, Home Finance. And it will be cheaper to borrow from Home Finance, less repayment. And if it's a very long-term loan, if he only borrows at 1%, that means by the time she pays off the money, she's paying far less. I'll explain that to you. So again, this is just a graph. Our GDP was going down, and COVID over here, it increased it. Again, if you look at the debt to GDP ratios, look at all the tourism-dependent countries, all of these countries that I highlighted, the debt to GDP ratio is sitting here. Fiji sits at 80%, so we're not doing too badly compared to them. Other countries, look at a country like New Zealand. Even though in New Zealand has always had very low levels of debt, even though the economy shrunk by only 2%, the debt has almost doubled. Before COVID, now after COVID, from 28% to 52%. That's what happened to them. If you look at all the other countries, even Australia, Malaysia, United States, Maldives, all of these countries, you look at the debts now, debt to GDP is a blue line, all have gone up. And Fiji sits here. Now, I highlighted to you about debt. If we did not put in that amount of money into the economy is already small, right? But if we did not put the 360 and all those other things into the economy would become even smaller. A lot more people would have fallen into poverty. A lot more people. Deep poverty. And also, the Fijian dollar value would have come down, would have been devalued. That's the last thing you want. Nearly everything we eat in this country, or that you have, is imported. Everything comes from overseas. Right? So this lady is wearing these rings, she's wearing this watch. The bangles, none of them are made in Fiji. The clothes she's wearing is sewn in Fiji, but the fabric comes from overseas. The shoes she's wearing comes from overseas. This mic that I'm holding comes from overseas. All of you eat roti, bread, purini, bambakau, panikeke. All of these things are made from flour. What is flour made from? Wheat. Do we grow wheat? Only 2 companies in Fiji make flour, Punja and Sons and Flour Mills of Fiji. But it's a price control item. I'll tell you what happens. So if say Punja and Sons, they buy the wheat from Australia and say they buy it at $300 a ton. They bring the wheat, they grind the wheat, put a few things, some vitamins and all of that, and you get flour. Then, of course, they don't sell it to you, they sell it to the supermarket. But before they sell it, they have to go to the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission and say to them, look, I bought it at $300 a ton. This is my labor cost, my electricity cost, my storage cost, my freight cost, transport cost. Then FCCC will look at all this and say, okay, you can make only this much margin. Controlled, only this much margin. And then they sell it to the supermarket. So Shop and Save then comes along and says to FCCC, I bought it for this much at Punja and Sons. This is my storage cost, my rental cost, my labor cost, shelving cost, blah, 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 all of those things. Then they'll say, you can make only this much margin, and then it's sold to you. So you price control at the wholesale when it's made, and price control at the retail when it's sold to you. You can price control it twice. Because we know nearly everybody uses flour. Most people start their day off with bread. Most people start off their day with roti. So it's a staple diet, staple food. But if tomorrow Australia puts up the wheat from $300 to $400, the price will go higher, even though it's price control. If this lady here, for example, is bringing tin fish from overseas in a container, one container load costs her, say, $100,000. And then she does a calculation and she sells the tin fish at $3 a tin. But if tomorrow the people she's buying the tin fish from overseas sells it to her double the price, you can't expect her to sell the tin fish at $3. Otherwise won't make any money. So she has to put up the price. And that's precisely what's happened. That's why the price of flour has gone up. Because Australia has put up the price of wheat. Why has Australia put up the price of wheat? COVID has meant that a lot of countries were shut down, production was not there, and of course now the war in Ukraine has not helped too. Ukraine produces a lot of wheat also. Ukraine, Russia, that part of the world, they produce a lot of gas, cooking gas you use. A lot of gas and fuel. So, of course there's gas and fuel from other countries too. But now those countries also know there's less supply, but demand is still there. So what will happen? After flooding, before flooding, Long Bean $2. After flooding, $5. Right? Bunch of bananas before Cyclone Winston, $2 a bunch. After Winston, $7 in Suva. Yongona, $85 a kilo before Winston. After Winston, $185 a kilo. Some people still drink it at the same rate. That's the reality, the short supply-demand issue. So the point I wanted to make here, and I'm digressing a bit, is that if we did not pump in that amount of money into the economy, you would have had a devaluation of the dollar. For a country that buys so much from overseas, if the dollar got devalued, everything would go up in price. Garlic, potatoes, onions, none of that is grown in Fiji. Cooking oil is just packaged in Fiji. All of it comes from overseas. So, as I mentioned, we are now borrowing from the World Bank, 40-year term, they give us 40 years to pay the loan, 10-year grace period, in others, first 10 years don't pay anything, 0% interest rate, only 0.75% service charge. So by the time we end up paying for this loan, we're only paying 43% of what we borrowed, because over the long period of time, when you pay money, as you know, $1 today, in 10 years' time, it's not going to be worth $1. That dollar could be worth 50 cents. So if you're borrowing, say, $100 million today, by the time you end up paying that over 40 years, you in fact are only paying back 43 million. That's what it means. So a lot of people, they talk about debt, a lot of people talk about dina or karza, they don't understand. Same thing the Japanese, this JICA. They lend to us at 40-year term, 10-year grace period, 0.01% interest rate. That's where we are. Now, as I mentioned to you about foreign reserves, when we buy things, you see all the cars parked outside here, they're all from Japan. Most of them, 99.9% are from Japan. We don't buy these cars in Fijian dollars. You need Japanese yen. All the fuel that's bought in Fiji is bought from Singapore. The 3 fuel companies, they buy it from Singapore. They pay for the fuel in US dollars. That's what you call foreign currency. You need foreign currency to trade with other countries. And the international benchmark is that if you must have at least 3 months worth of foreign currency to be seen to be stable. In 2010, we had 4.7 months worth of foreign currency. We had $1.3 billion. Today, we have 8.7 months worth of foreign currency and $3.1 billion. So we're in a good place. We can trade. We can buy things from overseas. Our foreign currency levels are high. Why? Despite tourism borders not being open, how did the foreign currency increase? Because we borrowed more from overseas. That was a strategic investment to make sure that our foreign currency levels never went down. We had enough money. And also when you get money from overseas, the liquidity increases. In other words, there's more money in the banks because it's outside money. This is what we call liquidity. There's about $2.1 billion in the banks. If tomorrow this lady goes to the bank and says to the bank, I want to put $2,000 in fixed term deposit, how much interest rate will you give me? They'll give a very little, because the banks already have money. Remember, banks, for them, money is a commodity. It's like bhaji and tarkari. Money is a product for them. You make money from money. So if the bank say, if they take $2,000 from her term deposit and they pay her 1%, they'll use her money to lend to her at 6%. That's how they make money. That's the banking system, right? So for them, money is a product. You don't say, oh, there's $2.1 billion. They don't look at it that way. They look at, okay, with $2.1 billion, what can I do with it? So the liquidity levels in Fiji is very high. Over here, we have $348 million in the banking system. Interest rate was 7.4%, average interest rate. Today, interest rate is 5.7%. So as the economy opens up, when people want to build more homes, factories, warehouses, the money, interest rate will be cheaper, which is a good thing. That more people then will be able to invest. I'm sure all of you agree the price of things are going up. Everybody will agree with that. I've explained to you why it's going up. There's another one reason why, two other reasons why it's going up. After COVID, when the borders opened up, the cost of freight has gone up. Before COVID, a container cost $5,000. I was talking to the businessman from one same route, $5,000. Today, the same container from that same place costs $15,000. It's gone up 3 times. It will continue to go up. In about 6 to 9 months, it will level off then. And the other thing is, for example, supply chain. Apart from things like war and all of that, the mobile phone that you have, I use a mobile phone again. Lots of money in it too. But mobile phone here, there's a chip inside that runs the mobile phone, like many things that you have. It's made from a particular metal. Metals are in short supply now. So obviously people still want mobile phones. In short supply, the price will go up. So supply chain issues. Government every year for sugarcane farmers, we subsidize their fertilizer. A bag of fertilizer before COVID cost $45.65. The farmer pays $20, we pay $25.65 on their behalf. In the budget, we have to allocate about $15 to $16 million. 2 weeks ago, we got the new price. Before the Ukraine war, $80 to $90 for the same bag of fertilizer. From $45.65 to $80 to $90. The farmer will still want to pay $20. Guess who's going to pay the $60? So that means instead of allocating $15 million, now we have to allocate $45 million in the budget for that. That's what's happening. And as you know, that China and Russia make nearly over 90% of all the world's fertilizer. So there are 2 types of inflation. Inflation means the price of things going up. One is what you call domestic inflation, this yellow line here. Domestic is locally produced things. At the moment, it's just above 0%, 0.6%. Is the foreign or imported inflation that's really gone up. That's where we're at. What can we do about it? We can't control the price overseas. One of the things we can do, as you know, the Minister Bala announced, we're doing a wages review. So we're doing a wages review where minimum wage will be reviewed. Now, many of you would know that there never used to be a national minimum wage in Fiji until the Bainimarama government introduced it, right? But there were other categories of work that had their own minimum wage. So the forklift driver, minimum wage was there. Minimum wage for waiter was there. Minimum wage for boiler maker, electrician, plumber was all there. But there's no national minimum wage. National minimum wage means anybody that does any work, you can't pay them below that rate. So if somebody comes here at this mandir and you say cut the grass, you can't pay them anything less than $268 an hour. Yeah, what we call house girls in Fiji, you can't pay them anything less than $268 an hour. That's the minimum wage for them. But other categories of work have higher minimum wage. In 2018, when the minimum wage was reviewed, we said we'll review it every 2 years. Obviously, 2 years was 2020. You can't review wages when over 100,000 people have lost their jobs. It's a wrong thing to do. It's a silly thing to do. So this is why now the borders have opened up, and that's why we're reviewing the wages now. And we have an independent professor that comes from Australia, and he comes and reviews wages. So he talks to all the unions, the employer groups, the employee groups. Some people don't want wages to be increased. Like the garment industry objects to wages being increased. They're saying, even if you increase it, you must only increase it by a little bit, because they're saying, their argument, I'm not saying it's correct, but their argument is that if you increase the wages too much in Fiji, that they might lose their orders to other cheaper countries like Bangladesh or somewhere else. And we may lose the contract. And therefore a lot of people can become unemployed. That's their argument. But other people are saying it's okay. So this is why we have somebody independent that goes around the countryside, and they have meetings with the Employment Relations Advisory Board, and they make then a suggestion to government. And the new minimum wage will come into effect. So look at inflation in other countries, as I mentioned. Look at USA. It's got the highest in a long period of time, 7.9%. India, New Zealand, UK, Singapore, Australia. We sit at about 0.5% as January 2022. February 2022, we sit at 1.9% here. Japan is Jan 2022. So, as we said, we expect the economy to grow by 11.3%. I want to thank everybody that's got their vaccines. Thank you very much, because by you getting vaccinated, we're able to open up the borders. Now, everybody has been vaccinated, you have not paid a single cent for it. First dose, second dose, booster, you have not paid a single cent for it. When COVID came around, nobody knew how long it was going to last. 6 months, 3 years, 10 years, 5 years, we're all going to die like flies, or what's going to happen? Nobody knew. Then, of course, as soon as the word vaccine was mentioned, the PM, as Minister for Foreign Affairs, also when he spoke to all the different partners of ours, we went and spoke to World Bank and ADB, because we knew there was a global pandemic. When there's a new cure for it or medicine for it, all the rich people will get to it first. And that's what actually happened. But we, through the diplomatic efforts, we got the first 4,000 doses from COVAX, then the first 100,000 doses given to us by the Indians, and then the Australians gave us vaccines, then the Kiwis gave us vaccines, and the Americans gave us vaccines. They gave it to us for free. And we've administered it to you. We have not charged anybody. But the administration of the vaccine costs money also. So if all of you live here, then you have to send the nurses, doctors, send people up in the interior on the horseback to pay for their, obviously, wages, but also things like food and all of that. Logistics, transportation, those things cost money too. But the vaccine was free. So we are very lucky, one of the few countries, few developing countries in the world where the vaccination rate is so high. So that's where we are at. Of course, the $500 million that we gave. The number of other things we did, ECAL, Environment Climate Adaptation Levy, we reduced from 10% to 5%. This is the tax you paid when you went and hired a car, rental car, or went to the movies, or drank beer at a pub, or stayed at the hotel. We reduced that just to make Fiji a lot more cheaper for people. Departure tax used to be $200, now it's $100. No more stamp duties, completely gone. No more service turnover tax. Over 2,000 items we reduced the duty of. You know, before, things like even blankets used to be 32% duty. It's now only 5%. Certain clothes were like 32%. Now it's 5%. A lot of things we reduced the duty of completely. Some of them we removed it completely. A lot of food items, there's no duty whatsoever. You want to start a business, you don't need a business license. You want to start a shop there tomorrow, you don't need to pay for business license. That's all gone. Before, people had to get a business license. We have a $200 million loan facility. Some of you, I know, may have benefited from it. If you applied for this loan, you got that loan, 3.99% was the interest rate, no more than that. We paid your interest rate for the first 2 years. It's in the budget. We pay your interest rate for the first 2 years. The principal payment and interest rate, you start paying the third year. So for 2 years, we want you to build your business. So we put in place all these types of facilities, of course. So where are we at? As I said, that we're in a good financial position in the sense that none of the banks have shut down. There are a lot of banks that have done what they call a provisioning. A lot of people, you know, they had like a maybe $1,000 or $2,000 loan. They worked at the hotel. They could not pay their loan, and the banks did not expect to get them get that loan, so they've written off that loan. That's what you call provisioning. They've written off that loan. So despite that, all the banks are doing well. There's liquidity levels in the economy is high. We have fiscal stability, financial stability, of course. The BPO sector is growing, and we're obviously putting a lot of money into agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. And we're focusing a lot on new technology.